to episode 314 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 29th of December 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Just about with you.
Graham.
Not for long.
And Will.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Phelim, for turning up at the last minute, even though we agreed several days ago to record it early, and you forgot, but that's fine.
I didn't even know what day it was, so...
Well, it's that time of year, isn't it, between Christmas and New Year, when no one knows what day it is. But anyway, we're going to do our 2024 Linux news in review. In January 2024, Ingenuity, the Mars helicopter, finally had its last flight. And we can link to a piece from NASA's JPL called NASA Performs the First Aircraft Accident Investigation on Another World. And they talk about why it crashed because of the mapping of terrain issues and whatnot. But it kind of closed the first chapter on Linux in space. But I believe that it is just the first chapter. And we always start these year roundups with this because it's good news. And even though this is technically bad news because it crashed and that's the end of that, I don't think it is bad news because it has proved itself to be so much more capable than it was meant to be. And Linux will definitely be in space again.
Yeah, for sure. I think the only way that this mission could have ended is in failure. You know, it's only a matter of time until it did crash or the hardware wore out or something happened. And the fact that it lasted way, way longer than they anticipated is a testament to the good design, the good software, a little bit of luck. But I think it did enough, well, in my opinion, what do I know, but it did enough to prove that Linux is a viable operating system for use on hardware in space. And that has to be good news and will definitely be the beginning of more Linux in space.
All right, well, the biggest story of the year has to be the XZ Utils backdoor, which almost got into production systems around the world, but didn't quite. Thanks to Andreas Freund, who found it and reported it responsibly. But this should have been a big wake-up call, and I don't think we have really, as an industry, taken heed of that wake-up call.
Oh, no. Microsoft has solved that now with that amazing GitHub funding that they've done there for 25 pence.
You're going to mention that every single episode, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Even though I'm unprepared, I'm still going to mention it. I'm always prepared to shit on that one, all right? I think we got lucky, all right? But also, we got to see how the system works when it works, because the amount of people that were able to dissect that entire series of patches and work out what was the story was amazing as well. But yes, it would be nicer to see more resources put into making sure this doesn't happen again, and not the shitty backhanded crap from Microsoft.
You're right, though. Everything was there in Git, available to be analyzed. And that just wouldn't necessarily be the case with proprietary software.
Yeah, I think the phrase should be, isn't the case with proprietary software, because I'm pretty sure they've all got things like that too.
What, you mean backdoors and whatnot?
Yeah, they have to have. And, you know, there's a lot of people invested a lot of money in espionage, both corporate and for country or whatever you want to call it. And I'm sure it's easy to get a intern job somewhere and slip stuff in eventually. Because I can't believe that there's enough eyes on those type of projects as there is even on open ones where there's not enough eyes.
Yeah. And they probably have similar version control systems that can be gone through with a fine-tooth comb. But the company in question is in complete control of that. Whereas something that is publicly developed, like XZ Utils, anyone can have a look at it. And so we got multiple trusted people went through it all and were able to tell us all exactly what had happened and what had been compromised and what hadn't.
I think there's no comparison. I think I'd much rather, even though obviously this existed in the first place, the fact that it was all dealt with so transparently and in a provable way just proves that we have the right approach. I wouldn't want to trust any other way. Who knows what goes on? Who knows what deals are made, what blackmail is paid, and what, things that go on. I can't imagine, but I bet it all does. But it will happen again, I think. That's the slightly negative part of it. Well, it is negative that it began in the first place, but I mean, we're still all aware of projects like this that are underfunded without enough resources. This is still a huge unsolved problem. I haven't got any great insight into how the big mega corporations making billions off open source software could make any kind of contribution beyond $10,000.
It's impossible.
Graham, is it fair to say one of the highlights of your year was Canonical's Open Documentation Academy?
It has. And yeah, thanks for putting this in. Honestly, personally, joining a company like Canonical, I didn't know if I'd be able to do things like this anymore. And it has been like a labor of love, creating the issues and helping people fix issues and help working on open source projects. And it has been a highlight of my year. Really enjoyed it, and it's still going really well. And we've got plans. We've been speaking to Thunderbird and a few other projects and GNOME. And we want to start creating proper documentation for things that are undocumented, all as part of the Open Documentation Academy. So yeah, it has been great.
And have you attracted new people who've never done documentation before?
We have. We've had 50 or 53 really great contributions through the Academy, from none of whom have done any documentation work before. Some of those things have even been coding. We've had a couple of coding issues. Somebody created an addition to restructured text that adds interactive command line elements to documentation that anybody can use, which was cool. Somebody else created an attribution system for Git to add people's credits to documentation, as well as all the documentation that works. There's been lots of different kinds of work done, and I can't quite believe it.
And this is really just the start of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically limited by my real work life getting in the way, because the more attention that I can give it, and I'm doing it with the other technical authors at the Canonical as well, but we're kind of limited by our other obligations. That's what's stopping us. We're a bit of a bottleneck. And in fact, we don't want to be the bottleneck. We'd like for this not to be Canonical's Open Documentation Academy and for everybody to get involved and run it. So maybe that could be part of the next stage.
Yeah, I feel like you need to publicize it more. You need to get out there and, get blogs to cover it and get on other podcasts and stuff like that, maybe.
Yes, you're right. I didn't know if it would work, and it has worked, but it's still in the kind of early stage, proving that the concept is something that I think is sustainable and will continue to work. And maybe I did have the confidence, but it'd be nice to see it grow from here. And I think it's in a good position to do it. And it is all just about open source. I just want people to get involved with open source and documentation, but also show people what open source contributions can look like in being friendly and collaborative and productive.
What you need to do is you need to go to these various places to promote it as Late Night Linux's Graham Morrison.
Yeah.
Kill two birds.
Yeah. Famous online.
Yeah. Pretty big deal on the internet.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks. Sorry. Shit. Shit at my memes.
Yeah, you need to work on your personal brand. Yeah. It's been a great year for KDE, but before we get into that, I do want to acknowledge that it has been a great year for GNOME, despite some of the problems we've had. Yes, laugh all you want, but the witch doctor lady left, which has got to be good, I think. And they have had some financial issues, but nevertheless, the GNOME desktop has progressed and introduced loads of cool features and really pushed the boundaries with Wayland and everything. So we'll link to a Phoronix article that rounds up loads of GNOME articles from the year. But I just had to balance out your KDE love fest that you're going to do now, Fairname. We had what they called the Mega Release 6, so the Plasma 6 desktop and all the other KDE stuff related to that. It was a bit of a rocky start, but it's turned out to be an excellent release, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't even begin to compare it to the likes of KDE 4 or even 5. It was a nice gradual sort of change, but for the better and with far better libraries and with the donation stuff, this is a proper user-funded project coming, or hopefully will be if it continues next year. And it's been excellent, really excellent.
Yeah, we talked about that recently, how they introduced a notification asking for donations, and that has gone really, really well. It's just been a great year for KDE, I think.
Yeah, and with more onus on sort of breaking everybody in. Like it used to have Nate's thing where he would cover everything in his weekly thing. Well, not everything, but he would cover the various parts of Plasma and things. And now the apps are getting involved. It's like a general sort of involvement and opening up of what's happening when. And it's excellent to see, because often with these projects, it just seems like a couple of bullet points come out every couple of months in a release note. And, this way you can feel connected to the whole project. And it's been amazing.
I think it's been great. And I think the idea of prompting people to make donations, I don't know why it's taken so long. I think it's a brilliant idea. We're used to it in like Android app land, and I respond to that as well. And I respond to this, and I think other projects should do the same thing. I think it's really good, probably through some kind of KDE framework.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by ServerMania. Go to servermania.com/LNL to get 15% off dedicated servers recurring for life. ServerMania is a Canadian company with over a decade of experience building high-performance infrastructure hosting platforms for businesses globally. ServerMania has up to 20 gigabits per second network speeds in 8 locations worldwide for optimized global reach. They have flexible custom server configurations tailored to unique needs, as well as a personal account manager offering free consultations. With 24/7 live chat support and support ticket response times under 15 minutes, you can always keep your systems running smoothly. Alan Jude from 2.5 Admins has been a happy ServerMania customer for over 7 years, so support the show and join him at a hosting provider that truly delivers. Get 15% off dedicated servers recurring for life at servermania.com/LNL and use code LateNightLinux. That's servermania.com/LNL and code LateNightLinux. Another pretty big story this year has been the WordPress fiasco. So just a brief recap. Automattic, the company who effectively makes WordPress, decided to go after WP Engine, which is a company that offers hosted WordPress. And I say Automattic, really, it was Matt Mullenweg, who is the boss of Automattic. He is the Matt in Automattic.
Wow, I've never got that. That makes sense.
We had this exact realization months ago when we first covered this. Come on, keep up, chaps.
I think I was away. I was away for that. See?
This has been a proper fucking embarrassment for one of the flagship open source projects. I mean, I know WordPress isn't cool and everyone's doing static site generators like Hugo these days, but a massive chunk of the web runs on WordPress, and that is open source software. It is a flagship project. And for him to just bring shade on it and just this drama, just fuck that guy, quite frankly. And there's actually been some developments recently. Mullenweg recently posted that they were pausing certain services with WordPress.org, including new account registrations, new plugin directory submissions, new plugin reviews, new theme directory submissions, and new photo directory submissions. And this is just for the holidays, which, okay, fair enough. But then he's kind of threatening to extend this pause, which is really bad for the whole WordPress ecosystem. And then, to make it even fucking worse, he goes on to Reddit and asks, what drama should I create in 2025? And there's a very interesting sticky comment, which I encourage everyone to read, about how it's really a terrible idea, all the stuff that he's done. And, you know, with the various structure of the company, and there's questions about how legal some of the stuff he's done. I think it really sums it all up. I won't read it out, but do click through in the show notes and you'll see it. But do you know what I mean about this being like a real stain on open source's character?
Yeah, totally. I saw this like reported on in some of the mainstream press, and they would often have to bring open source as part of explaining what was happening. And it besmirched the name of open source by having all the things discussed at the same time, when there's so many other amazing open source stories that obviously don't fit into the negativity feedback loop of being reported in the popular press.
Yeah, exactly. It's a real disappointment to me that this has still not been resolved, and it looks like it's going to drag on into 2025, and it's getting all legal cases and all the rest of it.
Yeah, you're right, Joe. Fuck that guy.
Let's talk about the Fediverse then. So we've all been happily using Mastodon and the Fediverse for a couple of years now, but it seems like decentralized social media, at least the idea of that, has really taken off this year. Threads, for example, which is Meta's Twitter clone, has somewhat connected to the Fediverse this year. It's not proper, it's not quite the same as something like Mastodon, but at least it's a nod to it. And Blue Sky has really taken off. which I think is a bad thing, but we'll get back to that. But at least they're making the right noises about being decentralized, although it is very much centralized at this stage. So I think that ultimately this has been the year of at least the idea of decentralized social media. Ironically, it's the year that I have pretty much stopped posting, or at least posted a lot less on social media, but I still read it fairly often.
So you're saying this is the year where social media died?
No, not at all. I think it's doing really well. I think that the Fediverse, and Mastodon specifically, is doing amazingly well. There's thriving communities on there.
I think we can all agree that the problems of the world stem from the fact that now most people can get on the internet and the World Wide Web. Until they joined, the place was much better. And so was Twitter. And so it's going to come to everything. So fuck them all.
Well, yeah, obviously. The problem with smartphones, I've said this many, many times before. Normal people got smartphones. The barrier to entry of the internet became far too low. And the result is the fucked up world that we now have.
Yeah, I know. They have to work it out between themselves, but I really don't want to be part of it.
Well, that's why the barrier to entry for Mastodon and the Fediverse is good. You have to have a few brain cells kicking around to work it out. And, the likes of George Takei can work it out, and he's a very clever dude, but he's also very old, isn't he? And if he can do it, then anyone clever can do it.
Well, he's also got a whole team of people managing his social media presence. I doubt he lifted a finger to make that happen.
Who knows?
It's very cynical of you.
It is very cynical.
But I still find Mastodon in particular to be lacking in some way. And I see nothing to change that so far. When Blue Sky became the de facto alternative, I don't know, like a couple of months ago, yes, okay, fine. Before that, everyone was already talking about it. But realistically, in the last couple of months, it really has solidified its position as the Twitter replacement.
Yep.
Mastodon had that opportunity and didn't get it because it's so fucking complicated.
It's good, though. I don't want normal people on my social media platform. Let them be on Blue Sky. Fuck them.
That's a good point, actually. I think it is a reasonable thing to do to have both a Blue Sky account for following what celebrities are up to and a Mastodon account for following what your friends and colleagues in the open source ecosystem are up to. That seems like a sensible approach, actually.
Yeah, your accidental partridge and your terrible maps and all of that, the normal people stuff, just let that be on Blue Sky. That's fine, whatever.
That's exactly what I was doing with it until everybody started piling in there. I was like, oh, I got to follow all these people back now, and that's going to ruin the sort of warmongering accounts that I used to follow.
Just don't bother following back people. Because Popey put us on a list, didn't he?
He did.
In one of those starter packs, and then we just got loads of followers, which is great. And I do post there sometimes, just as an experiment, really. Like, I posted a really stupid thing about Spice Girls and how Jerry is the only true Spice Girl. Because Posh, Baby, and Scary are not spices. And I got basically zero engagement on Blue Sky and a few likes on Mastodon. But I think it is a shame. I think it's a shame that a lot of open source people have gone over to Blue Sky because that's where everyone is. And like, it's just your standard VC-backed company that's not really making money and is going to have to do a rug pull at some point. Whereas Mastodon and the Fediverse is a bunch of volunteers standing up servers and interacting with each other in a much more old school internet way. And that just appeals to me much more. But it's critical mass and network effect and all that shit. People want to follow the popular accounts. And Blue Sky has emerged seemingly as the Twitter replacement. I think Threads has to some extent for like the cool Instagram type people. But then the normal people are all on Blue Sky now. And Mastodon is just left with a few nerds. But I still think that's better than there being one Twitter.
Yeah, I agree.
I know there's a project to be able to link the likes of Mastodon to Blue Sky. I'd like to see something a bit more official, like them to actually say, yeah, we know the Fediverse exists out there and we will actually officially link and talk through people. But I mean, I can't imagine that because that would mean they were sort of diluting their own product for the eventual win that they're going to fool investors into getting. Quite a hard one.
Yeah, and I'd like to see Threads make more of an effort there and make it properly interoperable with the Fediverse. I know that a lot of people on the Fediverse are not impressed with that because threads are such a shower of bastards, but you can just block them.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong. But if you want to block them, the whole instance or whatever, then you can do that, can't you? I said this months and months ago. The Fediverse is like forums where everyone is admin, and you can just block whole servers if you want to. And it's brilliant. But I am left with this lingering sense of disappointment when I see people say, oh, I'm on Blue Sky now, I'm not going to be posting here much anymore on Mastodon. But fuck them. Quitters. It's been a reasonably good year for Raspberry Pi then. First of all, in May, we found out that they were going to go public, IPO. And we were very negative about it at the time. But so far, it's been all right, I think, hasn't it?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess the fact that we don't have much news on it is a good thing.
Well, the stock price is surging. I think it started at about £3.85 and now it's at like £6.36 as we record. So they must be doing something right. And we've had various launches, haven't we, of the Pico 2W and the Pi 500 and the monitor. And they've been pretty well received. I know I've been pretty down on them. And
I was going to say, not from you, they haven't.
No. Although what's really funny, right, is we talked about this recently, and I said, oh, just buy this N100 box off Amazon for 99 quid. And I think you, Phelim, said, oh, yeah, well, the company will have disappeared in 2 weeks. Well, I think by the time I'd finished editing it, the product was no longer available on Amazon.
Love it.
And now you're looking at more like 150 quid and you want to get 8 gigs of RAM. But nevertheless, I stand by it. I think you're still better off with an x86 machine to do the vast majority of what people who buy Pis do. But I think that we were quite worried about this IPO, but it has actually turned out to not really affect anything so far negatively. But it's early days. I reserve the right to shit on them for it. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Loads of the Late Night Linux family hosts use Tailscale because it gives you the power of WireGuard with a simple and quick setup. I got it up and running in a few minutes without having to open any ports. Tailscale lets you connect anything, anywhere. Provide connectivity to any resource for your organization, from dashboards to a Synology NAS or Windows file server, from self-managed DNS servers to software as a service applications. If you want it off the public internet, Tailscale will provide secure access. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. Right, it's time to talk about Mozilla then. So, 2 rounds of layoffs in February and November. And then they offered a white label data deletion service thing, which turned out to be snake oil because, as the Verge headline says, Mozilla just ditched its privacy partner because its CEO is tied to data brokers. So that was a complete fucking disaster. And then Mozilla welcomes Anonym, privacy-preserving digital advertising. That went down like a fucking wet fart. And it's just not been a great year for Mozilla. They've had various staff changes at the top, and we've just spent the entire year shitting on them, haven't we?
We've still got 2 days left, though.
We've been politely encouraging them. I don't know why you'd say shitting now. Come on.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that. But it gets even worse, doesn't it? Because the Department of Justice in the US is cracking down on Google. They basically said you're a bunch of monopolistic bastards. And one of the things that the DOJ wants them to stop doing is paying other companies to make Google the default search engine. And it turns out that Apple makes an absolute shitload of money from this in Safari on their iPhones and iPads. And of course, Mozilla makes a massive chunk of their revenue from this money. So if this does happen, which is reasonably likely, I think, then Mozilla could be completely fucked. So it's just complete doom and gloom, essentially.
I don't see an immediate route out of this mess for Mozilla, sadly. They are so dependent on so little diversity in their income that if they do decide that they're going to shut down or split up the search engine deals in the way that we worry that they will do, I can't see where that replacement cash is going to come from. And if that kills Mozilla, or more specifically, if that kills Firefox, then that is a real shame. Yes, the code is open source. We may see forks and things like that, and I suspect that we will, and I hope that we will. But to lose Mozilla's voice in the web ecosystem, that is a bad thing. They have done a lot of good for the web and open source generally. We've seen it generally dissolving over the last, let's say, 2 years. If it just goes out in a whimper like that, it's such a shame, such a waste. But I can't see how they can change that. They've tried everything, nothing's worked. I personally don't have any better ideas.
Well, clearly the answer is a less lucrative deal with Microsoft to make Bing the search engine. They're going to have to do that if this case does play out the way it's looking like it might. And so they'll have to become much leaner. And so it could, in theory, be a good thing. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because if your revenue is all coming from your browser and you've got less revenue, then you need to spend that money on the browser, don't you? And so they'll stop spending it on all the other bullshit and keep Firefox as a great browser. That's my positive spin on this.
Ain't going to happen, Joe. Bing's market share is far too small. They would get a minuscule amount compared to what they get to Google. Also, I just don't feel like they give a shit about Firefox. And there's been nothing in the leadership of the foundation or in their commitment to Firefox that I've seen that convinces me they'll make the right decisions even if their options were seriously restricted. I really wish it were different. I've been quiet thinking, what's the point in this kind of 2024 in review if we're just going to shit on Mozilla even more? But they need to change. Something needs to change at the foundation. That's what I really feel.
I actually considered just not putting anything about Mozilla in this review, but I just don't think that we could do that in all honesty, could we?
It is too important. And I speak to quite a few people and I say, do we go on about this too much? And honestly, all of them, at least there's a self-selecting bias in this, but all of them have said no. We all care too much about it being a success. So it is like, I don't know, parenting a drug addict.
Yeah. You just can't give up on them.
Yeah.
Because what is it going to look like if it does go away, Mozilla, let's say? Because Firefox won't completely go away, will it? Because it's open source code. But let's say Mozilla just completely goes away. What happens then? We've got Gecko and Firefox frozen in time. And, there'll be community people trying to continue the development of it. But all the people that Mozilla are paying loads of money will have to go and get other jobs and may contribute a little bit in their free time, but development will slow down massively. Meanwhile, Google will ramp up development or keep development of Blink and, keep changing all the standards. Firefox will fall behind and you'll get an increasing number of websites that won't work on Firefox anymore. And then it'll just become less and less relevant to the point where it's a proper niche browser that only works with old school HTML websites, and anything that is complicated, rich JavaScript experiences, web apps, for want of a better term, won't work. And it'll just be a complete fucking irrelevance and we'll have a monoculture effectively. And that will be a shit situation. So we need someone who's good at business to come up with a business model. And I think that is Bing, but you don't think so, Graham. But whatever it is, there needs to be a revenue stream and probably just money from the users, because that's ultimately the best bet. And they need to attract the top talent from Mozilla and start again. It's the only way that this is actually going to work. And it's a fucking long shot, unfortunately.
I don't think money is the main problem. Of course, it's the problem that they've been trying to solve for the last 8 years, but they've had shitloads of money. They could have put shitloads of money aside and used that for Firefox's investment, but they haven't. That's what worries me. It may well be that Bing's money is enough for them, but I don't trust in them making the right decisions to put that money into Firefox when they can't do it with $200 million.
Yeah, that's why I think we need a new organization, really. But if you are a developer working for Mozilla on loads of money, are you going to take the risk to go for some plucky new alternative? If you've got a family and all the rest of it, I don't know. I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, but I can't imagine you'll have a job at Mozilla longer anyway, so...
True. And I like to think that the people working on Firefox do it out of love for open source and everything. So maybe this will work, but it needs someone who's really good at business to take it on and do the relevant deals or set up the relevant funding from the community. I mean, Thunderbird did a bloody good job, didn't they? They should learn from that. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when we'll have some predictions. We'll review our predictions from last year, and I will somehow manage to win, probably, even though I probably shouldn't. And we'll also make some new predictions. So until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Tatum.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.